Morning, everyone. My name's Kestral. Huge thanks to the DevOpsDays London team for such a great welcome. They've been fantastic behind the scenes with all of us who've been involved in getting ready to speak and everything, so a huge thanks to you to them. And at the start, I would like to say a huge thanks to our BSL interpreters as well, who hopefully are just going a tiny bit red right now because I'm making them talk about how wonderful, fantastic, and generally all-round amazing they are, so thank you. Love doing that. So I spent about 25 years working in software, in technology, and now I don't do that day to day. Instead, I spend more time talking about software, which is quite a nice thing to graduate onto. My fingers are less achy, my voice, however, much more so. So I spend my time now writing and talking about all of the stuff that I got to work on over the last 25 years. And today I get to talk to you a little bit about the idea that code is never neutral. But I know that's a really huge topic, and it's first thing on a Tuesday morning. So let's ease us into the conference with a nice, light, easy question. And a clicker that doesn't work. There we go. Who is responsible for the impact of atomic weapons? Did anyone in the room want to take sole responsibility for that at this point? Was it the enterprising physicists who first split the atom back in 1932? Was it Oppenheimer? Was it the director of the Manhattan Project? Was it the atoms themselves for allowing themselves to be split in the first place? Was it Sun Tzu who wrote The Art of War, or Odin, Ares, Menehit, or any of the hundreds of other people or deities that literature have blamed war for over the years? Okay, maybe. Maybe that's a slightly too difficult question for first thing on a Tuesday morning. Let's tone it down a little bit and talk about gun violence. Who is responsible when gun violence is carried out? There's a song by Goldie Looking Chain that would suggest rappers. But is it the gun, the bullet, the person using the weapon, the person who sold the weapon, the person who made the weapon, the person who designed the weapon, the person who came up with the concept of guns in the first place? Or is it Guy Fawkes who thought of some interesting uses for gunpowder once upon a time? All right, again, maybe a bit too big for a developer conference on a Tuesday morning. So my last question: what do we do when software becomes responsible for causing physical, psychological, or emotional harm? It's a much, much harder question. It's 2025, right? We've had generations and generations of news about gun violence. Nuclear war and nuclear weapons have been a thing for nearly 100 years. In 1932, the atom was first split. We're not that far away from the centenary of that. So we have had so much time to get used to the idea that those things can cause harm. But we've not had nearly enough time to even contemplate the idea of software that can hurt people. And it turns out it's not simple, because just like every other discussion around harm, nothing ever seems clear. But the truth is, responsibility doesn't sit neatly with one group whenever harm is involved. When I said who is responsible for atomic weapons, and someone said everyone, I would say think about every single step in the chain of creating software. How many fingerprints are on a web form that someone submits, a piece of software that runs in the background at a doctor's surgery? Every system, every tool, every line of code has a chain of responsibility. And whether we like it or not, all of us in this room are part of that chain. And that's why I'm here this morning to talk about possibly the most uncomfortable conference talk that I've ever written. And it is that code is never neutral. I'm trying really hard not to make this a doom and gloom session, I promise. But every time we sit down at the keyboard, we make choices. Some of them are tiny, almost invisible, imperceptible choices. Others shape entire systems. But they all add up. And the systems we build don't just stay in our Git repos or on our servers. They leak into real lives, into how people work, how people travel, how people love, how they learn, and how they survive. Let's look at a few examples of that. We've all been made aware, thanks to ITV and recent headlines, of the Post Office Horizon software scandal. For those who aren't particularly in the know, Horizon was a piece of software that was used by sub-postmasters at post offices to handle all of their accounting. And it led to over 900 post office workers being accused of theft and fraud because of faulty software. People who had served their communities for years suddenly found themselves in courtrooms, bankrupted, humiliated. Some went to prison for crimes they didn't commit because of a software error. Some people, before they got justice, took their lives. And here's what's really chilling about this example. Horizon was not the first failed system at the post office. Horizon came after a system called CAPTCHA, which is an acronym, but I can't remember what it stands for because it's very long. And that came right after another piece of software called Echo Plus. This is 40 years worth of software. Echo Plus was accounting software where people, sub-postmasters, would save their accounts to a 5¼ floppy disk and post it to the mainframe. But it has now come out through investigation and through reports that each of these systems had fundamental flaws in their software. Each of them led to wrongful convictions of sub-postmasters. And yes, the doubling down on that, the pushing for convictions on that all came from a toxic management culture and all of the things that have kind of come out through investigation and through all of the documentaries and things that you've seen on TV about this. But none of the software had gone through rigorous enough testing by the development team or by third parties involved in the development of this software. And it had real-world consequences. Not only that, they were 3 failed systems in a row. Many of the people that worked on the first worked on the second. Many of the people that worked on the second worked on the third. 3 failed systems in a row. When we say move fast and break things, we forget that the things being broken aren't just systems. In this case, they really were people. So 40 years of example there. Let's look at something maybe a bit more recent, something from the 2010s. Tesla. Love or hate Tesla, it exists. It is part of our world. And 10 years ago now, in October 2015, I can't believe it's been a decade, they released a feature called autopilot. Well, they called it autopilot. It's actually called an ADAS, an advanced driver assist technology, that they happen to call autopilot. October 2015, that's nearly 10 years that Tesla Autopilot has been available in cars to drivers. And it has been responsible for almost 1,000 serious incidents in the last decade, where an investigation panel have deemed that the software was directly at fault in the accident. 51 of those involved fatalities of people in the car that were deemed the sole fault of Tesla Autopilot. Now, obviously, Tesla has been pressed for comment on this, and the PR team at Tesla have said, the millions of journeys that people have made, the thousands of lives that have been positively uplifted by Teslas, 51 fatalities, that's just an acceptable margin of error. Genuine, legitimate quote there from Tesla PR. Acceptable to who? Not to the families of people that have lost lives. Not to the people who thought that technology was watching out for them. Those who trusted that a billion-dollar company wouldn't put unfinished technology into something so important as self-driving mechanisms in their cars. And when a company frames human life as acceptable margins, we really have to ask, who gave them the right to decide that? Because, if a doctor who's been training for 10 years told me, we have to cut off your arm, it's kind of within an acceptable range of things we have to do, I'd want a second opinion. But an over-the-air software update in my car, I don't even get to make that decision, let alone install a different operating system on it. One last example I want to take a look at this morning. There's a company in the US called Optum Health. This is a very recent example. They've been using AI to identify patients with the highest healthcare needs. It's super noble cause, and I know a lot of people that are doing research in this area. AI has this kind of magical promise that it can do things that humans can't. It can look at images of scans and extrapolate data that we'd never dreamed of. And their AI was all about prioritizing access to healthcare, making sure that the people that needed healthcare the most got access to it as quickly as possible. They missed one variable, both in their creation of the software and in the testing of the software. The system used past healthcare spending as a proxy for healthcare need, without really realizing that black patients had historically received less care, spend less, not because they're healthier, but because of systemic inequality. This AI wasn't being malicious, it's just AI. It's just a machine. It had a blind spot because its programmers had a blind spot. So the algorithm learned the wrong lesson from this data. It decided black patients must be healthier because that's the data I've been shown. And the result of that was that black patients were routinely flagged as lower priority for care. There is now a class action lawsuit in the US because of this admission from Optum Health. And this is what happens when we forget that code has an impact on the lives of the people that are ultimately using it. Okay, well, you all look really sad now. Promise I'll raise the tone a little bit. This is meant to have a rousing conclusion. So, I said all software is political at the start of my talk. What did I mean by that? Because I don't mean political with a big P. I don't mean party politics, party lines, parliamentary debates. Politics with a small p is about really one thing, and that's power. Who gets seen? Who gets excluded? Who gets heard? Who gets silenced? And software used to just be something that ran on a box in an office. It was a funny little thing that computer people cared about. But software now makes those decisions for us every day. Which communities get access to things? Which families get help? Which identities get represented? Which voices are amplified? And which voices are omitted completely? And so whether you're writing infrastructure scripts, database schemas, machine learning models, whether you're just a hobbyist writing some code and sticking it up on GitHub, your work is political because it shapes the power dynamics of the world. I used to work for a startup in San Francisco, and back when we were very small, our CEO used to give a talk about software people and how the world was changing because people stopped seeing things as boxes and hardware and started seeing that software could really change the world. If you put software into everything, you can update it, you can change it, you can make it do really magical things. And that was 15 years ago. And now I look at the world and think, there isn't a day that goes by where I'm not using software. Even if I'm not sat at my laptop, I am using software in the systems I interact with, the people I talk to, the chatbots I argue with so I can talk to a real human. And even then, it's just a slightly better chatbot that tries to convince me it's a real human. But software isn't a side issue anymore. Think about it, healthcare records, housing applications, financial systems, border controls, elections, entertainment, what adverts show to us when we're doing the things we do day to day. There isn't a single area of life that is untouched by what we build. If you've deployed to production, you've changed the world. It might have been a small ripple, like throwing a pebble into a pond. It might have been a tidal wave, but the impact is real. If you write an application that's been used by a human, if you manage a service that is used by developers in their applications who write things that then get used, you maintain a package that is used as part of any piece of software ever, if you build or create hardware, if you touch a computer, then this talk is targeted at you. Because software is not just a job anymore. Software is a service. We've talked about software as a service for years, but not as I mean it. Software provides a service to humanity, and every piece of software is part of that puzzle. Now, I felt this a little bit recently in my own life as well. I am part of the LGBTQ+ community. I don't necessarily feel as safe as I used to wearing a giant flag coming out of my back, but I do have these nice little rainbow stylings on my boots. But as a member of the LGBTQ+ community, I'm used to tech betraying me at the moment. It betrays a lack of diversity of the team that originated it. Right, from the lack of options around partners or relationship statuses. I filled out forms before that assumed I had a wife or a husband, or that wanted to kind of put me in a specific box, or if I split up with someone, there aren't the options for things like that, but it needs to know my relationship status, and it's a required field, and I can't move on without it. And then, there's the constant lack of options around pronouns and asking for people's gender. And anyway, do you even need to be asking me that question? The amount of forms I'm filling out for something entirely random. I'm in the process of buying a new car, right? And on the website for that, there is a a required mandatory form, gender, male, female. To buy a car. Now, I get that for marketing purposes, that's a really handy statistic to know. Great, fine, maybe make it optional. Maybe put a few more options in your form. I know data validation, people don't want to give free text fields to people, but that's fine. Just give people options, give people choice. Stop making things mandatory. So I am constantly excluded on a daily, sometimes hourly basis by the tech that I use. And this may seem like a really little thing. I did start the talk off with a kind of stark reminder of nuclear war. So pronouns seem a little bit less, world-ending, but it kind of proves my point. Something doesn't need to be a threat to the future of humanity to be important. And I know the news, it's kind of difficult right now. All the news we watch makes us think that everything is either life or death or unimportant. But people who aren't the same as us still need to be able to use the software that we create. They need to feel validated and accepted. That the tools they are being presented with, sometimes with no choice as to whether they can use them, need to feel seen and valid and validated. Now, I'm generally more tech savvy than the average bear, so when I hit a form or a platform that doesn't work for me, I tend to hunt down an admin email or something, and I always reach out. Because I like to assume the best in people. And so I see a form that doesn't have a gender option that works for me or pronouns that I would want to use and it's a mandatory field, I'll drop them an email or a chat if I can get through to an actual human and say, just so that you know, 9 times out of 10, I get told, oh yes, we're well aware of this. Few people like you have emailed us before. It's just a bit too much effort, isn't it? I mean, we've got deadlines. We don't have the budget. We don't have the time. You know what? I'll forward your email onto the compliance team. I've abandoned more sign-up forms than I've completed. But that's a choice that I have been relatively privileged to make. Because I have time and knowledge to be able to get around some of these systems, to hunt for alternatives. Not everyone has that. But hey, at least the compliance team are on it, right? Wrong. Because this idea of being an ethical software developer, it's not about compliance. It's not a checkbox. It's not a document you sign once and then forget. Ethics in technology is more like literacy. It's part of the syntax, or at least it needs to be. It's the ongoing ability to read the world clearly and to write into it responsibly. It is part of the craft. So if you wouldn't ship code without testing it, if you wouldn't deploy without monitoring, why would we ship systems without asking what they mean for people's lives? And I get it, right? It is really hard. There are deadlines, pressure, everyone's a little bit burnt out. Management doesn't really reward thinking about these things, and the world is a lot, and so we work to managers' expectations. Doing the right thing sometimes, more often than it should, feels like having to put in extra unpaid work. Feels impossible to find the time. It is genuinely really hard. This is not an easy talk, and it's not an easy talk to open a conference with either. Because like it or not, working in software, you have accepted responsibility. You might not have signed up for it. You might not be being paid for it. And I would say 9 times out of 10, you're probably not even thanked for it. But if the world runs on software and you build software, then you are shaping the world. Here's the kind of ugly truth. Responsibility doesn't vanish just because it's hard. Every line of code has consequence. Every deployment changes something for someone. We don't get to opt out. Every single one of us in this room does not get to say, this isn't my job. But, thankfully, it's also not solely your job. And there are things we can all do in our day-to-day lives, both at work, with our personal hobbies, projects, with the people that we interact with, that can help us to get by. I can't claim to have all the answers here. I'm just one person who spent a long time working in tech, spoken to a lot of people. There are loads of different frameworks and tools and things, but as you go through the rest of today and tomorrow in this conference and go back about the rest of your weeks, I want you to think a little bit about having a bit of a code, something that sits within you that helps you to draw some lines and maybe think and ask the right sort of questions as you go along. It's not a global framework you can sign and forget. It's not a compliance tick box. It's more like a compass, just something that can help you guide the way a little bit. So I'm going to break this down into 5 easy steps, because this is a conference talk after all. It would be remiss of me not to give you some key takeaways and 5 easy steps. So, number 1, exclusion is really sneaky. Sneaks up on you. It hides in defaults and in edge cases. Informs that everyone assumes a fine. But when we name it, it's really easy to fix it. One honest question can open the door for thousands of people. In everything you get ready to ship, everything you're building, just ask, who does it exclude? Does it exclude anyone? Simple question. Ask it aloud. The answer might be no. And the answer might be, we can't fix this right now. But knowing is half the battle. And that kind of leads on to thinking about how we interact and engage with projects from the start. Diversity isn't a nice to have. And I know diversity, inclusion, and equality are weird words in 2025. They spark joy for some and fear for others and deportation for a whole other group of people. But make diversity a feature. It's how you catch what others miss. It's how you build systems that reflect the real world. And if everyone in the room looks the same, acknowledge that. Fight for diversity, not as a decoration, but as part of your design. Fight for transparency. This particularly applies to the current generation of AI systems, but this works for everything, for every piece of software. If a system can't be explained, can it really be trusted? If you don't know how something is doing something in your code base, that is a bit of a red flag. Demand clarity, even when the business pushes for speed, because trust is the currency that we really can't afford to bankrupt. It's such an important part of software development. And I'm not saying push your public keys and your private keys to Git. I've made that mistake before. But think about documentation. Think about how you explain things internally. Think about making sure there are no hidden black boxes anywhere in your code. All right, this is a bit of a cop-out one. It's easy to say, speak up, but it's actually the hardest one on the list to do. It's so difficult. It's so uncomfortable. But silence is still a decision. Walking away from this talk today and doing nothing is a decision. Silence always sides with the status quo. You don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes just asking the question is enough. Normalize ethical reflection. Build it into your retros. Put it in your stand-ups. Ask, what did this exclude? How did we do? What went wrong? What went right? When reflection becomes normal, responsibility becomes part of the culture. So here is the call to action as I careen into 2.5 minutes left of my talk. Take this with you. Take this talk, these feelings, this sentiment back to your code bases, your pipelines, your teams, back to the late nights, the stand-ups, the deadlines that never seem to end, back to that one manager that everybody had. Every company has one. It's a brilliant place to work, except that one person. Because even when you're tired, even when you're under pressure, even when management doesn't reward it, this stuff matters. And you can call on any number of pop culture references you like, from the traditional that speech from hackers about how it's all about choice, from Morpheus in the Matrix saying, you know, you've got a choice. I tend to prefer nice kind of artsy quotes, so I'll put one of those up. It is choice, not chance, that determines destiny. Every commit is a choice. Every deployment is a decision. Every system that you build shapes the world. Congratulations! You're all way more important than you thought you were when you woke up this morning. And while this talk may be a little bit scary, the great thing is that you are not powerless. Every single person in this room can come together and make a difference with the code we write, the systems we deploy, and the people that we work with day in, day out. So that has been my slightly nuclear crater-style introduction to today's DevOps Days conference. I hope that it has been something to inspire you rather than something to depress you. I'm a big fan of making sure that everything in a talk is referenced, so you can always check all of the references from my examples and everything else I've mentioned today via that QR code, and I'll put them out on Blue Sky later. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you very much for having me here.